Today, on episode 58 of the 3-Point Blitz, the NBA draft lottery results are in. The Wizards get the number one pick. Will this finally be the thing to help turn their franchise around? The OKC Thunder and New York Knicks complete sweeps in their respective conferences, building momentum for the conference finals. And Stephon Diggs is on the move. Where will he land? The NFL schedule slowly being released for 2026. Eagles-Cowboys confirmed for Thanksgiving Day. All that and more today on episode 58 of the 3-Point Blitz.
Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Steve! Come to my channel, you know the deal, yo boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue, think, and slate, dropping unrealistic man, 2K takes for the clip. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach, look on to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal, yo boy, always keep shit real. The 24/7, 365 way, sports content for the reals to fill the day.
Good morning, good afternoon, folks. What is up? It is episode 58 of the 3-Point Blitz. And as you can tell, we're officially back in outdoor season for the 3-Point Blitz. We're continuing the theme of the last couple weeks. And we are episode 58 on May 12th, 2026. And if you guys saw the thumbnail, some of you might be wondering why in all people was Dana White in the thumbnail. You guys know me, I don't talk MMA, so why? Well, that's going to tie into the rant of the week because it's not going to be about his company UFC, but it's about a comment he made that affects all aspects of life. His comments about men's mental health awareness. So we're going to talk about that, get that out the way. So on a podcast last week, Dana White went on and he talked about how he's not a fan of this whole men's mental health awareness movement. And it caught a lot of buzz on the internet. So, let's just get right into it. I'm going to look up the comments. If you guys don't know, read it to you and explain why this was so stupid. So he made some comments there. This was his comments on the recent podcast it was called Katie Miller Podcast. He said, quote, "I hate this whole men's mental health bull that they talk about. Unfortunately, when you're a man, you are a provider. You can't be that guy posting on social media, oh, had a bad day and I'm so sad." That was part of what he said. And now, while he has had the right to his opinion, on the flip side, we have the right to our opinion. And if we, the public, are not fans of his comments, I'm already not really a fan of, I pretty much fell off board with the UFC because of Dana White, and this is just another reason why. Now, on to the comment itself. The reason this was so stupid is because, number one, his idea of men's mental health awareness that people post on social media, oh, I had a bad day. But if you actually follow the movement closer, that goes through all walks of life, through music, sports, artistic expression, and social media to some degree, seminars, whatever the case may be. That's not what the men's mental health awareness movement is. Matter of fact, what makes this even more ridiculous is that this man, the CEO of UFC, some of his own fighters, both active or retired, have spoken up about mental health awareness. You even have guys such as Sean Strickland, Nick Diaz, Dustin Poirier, guys who have openly spoke about being mental health awareness, who were either former or actively signed to his own roster. And not to mention, and I know from experience, though, when it comes to men's mental health seminars, it's not posting on social media. One of my friends had a little thing going late last year where he had once a month Saturday meeting, a men's mental health awareness panel, where he considered it a, quote, safe space for men to speak up without tying into the old school notion that men are supposed to stay silent and it's not a provider. Well, unfortunately, we live in a world where, sad fact, unfortunately, men do end up losing their battle to depression or mental illness, and ultimately, a lot of them are no longer on earth because of it. And that's the unfortunate shame. That's the part Dana White's missing out on. His comment, his reason why it's a bad thing, does not touch up on the men's mental health awareness movement at all. It's only a small portion, a very small portion of that. He didn't touch up on seminars and webinars discussing men's mental health, celebrities doing interviews speaking out about it. You've had Dan Reynolds, the singer of the Imagine Dragons, that spoke about mental health awareness live at his shows, along with so many others, either musicians, athletes who have spoken out publicly about men's mental health awareness. So no, it's not just a social media post of, oh, I had a bad day. And it's a shame that this guy is going to disown the movement when he himself, I mean, it's already bad enough that UFC has this reputation of having a cult following and gets this negative stigma for it. Now, comments like this are just going to make it even more of a negative stigma about the UFC, its cult, its fans, and so on and so forth. And that's just another reason for me not to follow along with it. So shame on Dana White. Don't listen to what his notion of the movement is. Actually do your research and know what men's mental health awareness is. It's not just simply posting on social media, having a bad day, and being unattractive to men or women, whatever that means. That is such a vague comment, too, in itself. It's like, dude, you've lost all credibility to me at this point, buddy. So I'll just say this. Be smarter than Dana White. Don't feed into his notion that speaking out about mental illness or depression makes you weak. No, it does not. It makes you stronger. It gives you some support through the fight. So please be smarter than that. Don't fall into that trap. But moving right along, now that we got that out the way, before we get into the NBA playoffs itself, there's one more part of the NBA we're going to talk about, and that is the NBA draft lottery, folks. Yes, it's official. The Washington Wizards have secured the number 1 pick in the NBA draft via the draft lottery. And now, well, it's kind of the old school Wizards color, but it looks like, with that being said, that they're secured to draft AJ with the number 1 pick for the 2026 NBA draft. And there's already people discussing. Seems like AJ Dibansa is going to be the number 1 pick, most likely. Some people even predicting Darren Peterson's going to the Jazz, with the Utah Jazz having the number 2 pick. But for the Wizards, I will say this, good for them that they finally got themselves a number 1 pick. Because that team's been a dumpster fire for years that has had nothing to go off of, except they're lucky they play in a big market city, and that's it. They haven't done anything significant in years. Last time, what was the last time the Wizards did anything significant of note at all? It would be the 2021 season when they made it to the playoffs as the number 8 seed with Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal on the team, only to get bounced by the Sixers in the opening round that year. And before that, you did have a few exciting regular season teams with John Wall leading the way with the John Wall-Bradley Beal duo. But ultimately, the Wizards have never been. Actually, the last time they were ever contenders was back during their Baltimore Bullets days with Elvin Hayes as their lead player. It's been that long since they've actually been true contenders. Because even though Wizards have had their periods where they were a bit popular, they drew people to the arena. You had Michael Jordan for a few seasons, which helped with ticket sales and TV ratings for their games. And then you had the Gilbert Arenas Agent Zero era where they got some notoriety, but they were a good regular season team, but never really experienced success. Point is, it's been years of the Washington Wizards just being a dumpster fire, especially in recent years. The epic fail of getting Trae Young and Anthony Davis at the trade deadline, only for those guys, only for AD. Did AD even play a game at all? And then Trae Young barely made an impact. He was missing time too. So what was the point of bringing in these guys only for instead, you guys to completely fall apart? I don't get. So yeah, the Wizards, obviously they need a number 1 pick. You got Alex Sarr, but Alex Sarr still needs a few more years before he could really develop into something. Now, if you keep Anthony Davis on the roster to be more of a mentor to those guys, to Sarr, and if they end up drafting AJ Dibansa from BYU, all right. Banta. If they do draft AJ, they have AJ, Alex Sarr. You have AD there to be a mentor. That could help them in the future. But you still, as far as this future goes, I saw one thing on IG asking who's stopping this team? AJ, Trey, Sarr, and AD. Well, for one, injuries, inexperience. But in the short term, the good thing is about having a guy like AD, who all in all, he is more, he still has his humble side. He can be professional guy too, even though he's not always there on the court. He could be a mentor to these guys. You got AJ, Sarr there, AD there for moral support. That could help them out in their developmental stages, but make no mistake, even if AJ does end up living up to the hype, it's going to take a few years before Wizards can truly do anything with it. Remember the Pistons with Cade Cunningham. Cunningham showed some flashes of brilliance early, but it took a few years before he, along with the Pistons as a team, truly developed. So, we'll see in about 4 or 5 years if Wizards securing the number 1 pick actually does help them down the line. It could help. It'll help bring hope in the short term, but in the long term, we got to wait and see how that plays out first. But with that being said, man, we're going to take a look at the NBA draft lottery draft order in just a second. Because I said the Jazz had the number 2 pick and so on. And you got the Grizzlies, Bulls, so on and so forth. Let's take a look at it real quickly. Oh, here we go. So we're going to take a look so you guys will see it for yourselves. Because now we can discuss the winners and losers. Let's see. So right here, here's the draft lottery. Right here, we can tell who's. And it's interesting. What stands in mind is the OKC Thunder have another pick. They have the number 12 pick, which they acquired during that rebuild phase when they were trading away picks left, then trading away for picks left and right. And that being part of the reason why the Thunder ultimately ended up in the position they're in as the defending champions, pulling off another sweep, possibly repeating. They already punched their ticket back to the Western Conference Finals. Now we just got to wait and see how the series between the Spurs and T-Wolves plays out. But back to that later. The point is the OKC Thunder, a favorite to repeat, has the number 12 pick. Like we said, Wizards number 1. You have the Utah Jazz number 2. Grizzlies 3rd. Bulls 4th. Clippers get the 5th pick. The Nets have the 6th pick. Sacramento Kings 7. The Atlanta Hawks 8. 9 Dallas Mavericks. 10 Milwaukee Bucks. 11 Golden State Warriors. 12 OKC Thunder. 13 Miami Heat. 14 Charlotte Hornets. Out of these guys right here, we'll start off with some of the losers. Get that out the way. I feel like the Brooklyn Nets don't exactly come into this exactly the most optimistic, getting the number 6 pick. The number 6. Meanwhile, the LA Clippers, who at least made the play-in tournament, they moved higher up the board. They're at the 5 pick after making the play-in tournament, mind you. It was in that trade with the Pacers with Ivica Zubac. They got actually good for the Clippers, who made the play-in tournament, who were okay at least last season. Not great, but okay. Now they get the 5 pick, a potential to get a future star. Because with the 5 pick, obviously more picks available on the board. But the Nets, that's bad because you're going to have the LA Clippers, who made the play-in, picking before you, and you were at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. And that's brutal right there for the Nets in that regard. Another potential loser in this one, I could see the Sacramento Kings after the dumpster fire season where they pretty much tanked. Let's face it. DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine all of a sudden were not playing in February. You remember we talked about this both on the pick and roll and not the pick and roll. You remember we talked about this here on the 3-point blitz and on everything on the table with Agent Warrior. We talked about how the Kings were pretty much tanking. It was way too obvious. And now the fact that they only got the 7th pick out of this makes them huge losers, because here you go. You pretty much tanked just for a 7th pick, where you got a team that made the play-in 2 picks before you. And so you sat your starters all of a sudden back-to-back with season-ending injuries. Let's call it what it is. It's obviously very suspicious. And now this ends up happening, that right there, I don't know, man. I don't see how that's possible. I just don't see how it was possible. That was just a coincidence. So they basically tanked only for the 7th pick. And that goes to tie into a shout out to Blaze Radio, where he talks about why teams tanking can backfire. Because just because you tank does not mean you're going to get a top 5 pick in the NBA draft. So the Sacramento Kings take a big L on that front. The Milwaukee Bucks going at the number 10 pick with the Atlanta Hawks via trade with the Pelicans, who made the playoffs, getting to pick 2 spots before them. The Clippers, who made the play-in, picking at 5. The Milwaukee Bucks, where you're starting all over again, basically. Giannis might be gone this offseason, and all you get is the 10th pick. At this point, I'm pretty sure the Bucks, if they do trade Giannis, they're definitely going to want picks in return. And now this brings up the potential discussion of, is there a team in the top 9 that could potentially be a good trade partner for the Bucks? I mean, maybe the Clippers, because after all, maybe you could throw a guy, maybe you could throw Giannis to the Clippers, maybe get some picks in return, try to get the number 5 pick as well to help with the rebuild. That's a possible option there. I mean, we don't know if the Clippers are going to agree to it or not, but it is a possible option, I think, of off the top of my head. Maybe a team like the Miami Heat might want to retool. That could be a potential trading partner. But if I'm looking for guys that are within the top, like in the top 9 that could be trade partners, realistically, the best option out of that list for a Giannis trade for the Bucks stuck at 10 would be the Clippers. Part of that deal would be the Bucks get the 5 pick in return. Clippers getting Giannis. That would be part of the deal potentially out of all the options in the draft lottery. But we'll definitely talk about that more. But point is, the big losers I see from this scenario are the Nets fall into the 6th pick. The Kings, after pretty much tanking away late season, only to get the 7th pick. So much for that tank, right? But then again, I mean, let's be honest, sometimes we speculate the draft lottery could be fixed. And there have been some fishy number 1 selections over the years, to say the least. There is the possibility that this whole throwing the Kings at 7th may have been okay, you guys tried to tank thinking you were going to get a top 5 pick? Well, think again type of deal. It is possible, though. And then you got the Atlanta Hawks, who did make the playoffs. Again, get up there. But then on the losers mainly are the Sacramento Kings, Brooklyn Nets fall into 6th, and the Milwaukee Bucks stuck at 10th after a dreadful season, possibly Giannis getting traded away. The winners of this potentially are the Washington Wizards. They can get the number 1 pick. They have the chance to finally get a star player that could help them for the future. Maybe, and if AJ does get drafted by the Wizards and pans up to the hype, you're talking 3, 4, 5 years from now, maybe the Wizards finally have something going if they invest properly and they probably build a team around them. The Utah Jazz, I could see being potential winners. You got Ace Bailey last year, who was solid. Now you get the number 2 pick, so you add a guy that can help Ace Bailey out, and you got a 1-2 duo for the future. I mean, hey, sometimes getting those early draft picks pays off for you in the long term. Ask the Orlando Magic, Shaq 1 year, Penny Hardaway the next. Sometimes that can work out in your favor in the long term if you invest properly. Then another team, another potential winner from this are, hey, the LA Clippers. They put up a solid effort last season with the roster they had. As of now, they have the number 5 pick, and who knows? Maybe with that, hey, you could get another star player on your team that actually could properly develop behind a respectable team, and maybe that could help you out good in the future. And then I also had the Atlanta Hawks as a potential winner. They made a run to the playoffs. They're building behind Jalen Johnson. They did, to their credit, win 2 games against the Knicks. Even though they got embarrassed in Game 6. When you consider how dominant the Knicks were against the Sixers, it's good for the Hawks. They actually managed to win 2 games. But point is, you're coming off that momentum. Now you're getting a top 10 pick in the draft. That could be a potential big win for the future. But there are some of the instant winners and losers that come to mind. You guys are more than welcome. Let me know who you think your biggest winners or potential biggest winners and losers are from the NBA draft lottery. But yeah, and speaking of winners now, we're moving right along to another team that were big winners. Actually, 2 teams big winners. First team we're going to talk about are the New York Knicks. They were one of 2 teams across the NBA, the active teams in the NBA playoffs, to complete a sweep. They did so, completing the sweep of the 76ers on Mother's Day with a absolutely dominant victory over them. And we saw it from the get-go, man. The Sixers were just no match for the Knicks. Outside of game two and the first quarter of game 3, the Knicks own the Sixers and had their number in this one. And I'm telling you, I really believe now that game 6 against the Hawks, where the Knicks destroyed them in MSG, it was Atlanta. They destroyed them like they didn't have a pulse. Big momentum setter that carried over into the series against the Sixers. I mean, and then on the flip side for the Sixers, look, I think they gave everything they had as a team in those 3 games when that 3-1 comeback against Boston in games 5, 6, and 7. They gave everything they had left just to beat the Boston Celtics and finally get that playoff series win against them for the first time in decades. But then Knicks came in here. They absolutely decimated the Sixers. And I'm not even going to come on here and hate on the Knicks. I'm not. I got to come on here and be fair and give the Knicks credit where credit's due. I noticed something that the Knicks and the Thunder had in common in their respective sweeps. Throughout most of their respective 4 games in their respective series, both the Knicks and Thunder had multiple players scoring double-digit points. And that was a big deciding factor. Sunday in game 4, you had 5 players from the Knicks scoring double-digit points. I'll show you guys right now. You got Mikal Bridges, 12, Josh Hart, 17, Cat, 17, Miles McBride, 25, Brunson, 22, and Landry Shamet had 12 points. Landry Shamet had 12 points. You can see right there, they outscored the Sixer. That's the key factor. You're having multiple players that can score. And in this case, Brunson didn't even have to be the lead scorer in this game. Miles McBride took that spot over. So that took some of the pressure off Brunson, where, hey, he's got a team player that scored 3 more points than him. Also, he had the help of Towns, Hart, Bridges, and Shamet. That's what you need from a team right there. And that's ultimately one of the reasons why the New York Knicks won this series. Now, if we look at the Sixers on the other hand, we got Embiid at 24, Maxey 17, Oubre 10, Paul George in 27 minutes only had 7 points. Edgecombe only had 8. Adem Bona had 7, Justin Edwards 8, Johnny Broom 7, Dominic Barlow 5, Dalen Terry 9, Quentin Grimes 6. And this is where the Knicks destroyed the Sixers, having depth on their team. And game 4 was just one example of that. That's just one example right there of why the Knicks ultimately destroyed the Sixers. And the thing is that the Knicks, like we said, we've seen it in recent years. They have the depth. They have the right pieces there to contend. It's just a matter of them getting over the hump. Last year, it was the Indiana Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals. The year before that, it was the second round against the Pacers. This year, they're going to be playing either the Cavs or the Pistons, to be determined in the Eastern Conference Finals. But then we take a look. Now, take a look at this is the Game 3 score box. Final 108-94. The Knicks, in this case, you had Bridges 23, Hart 12, Brunson 33, 15 from Shamet, Landry Shamet. There's your 6-man for the series right there. In 2 of your 4 wins, he scored 15 points for them. And he only played 12 minutes in game. He only had a 3-point there in game 1. He only got 8 minutes in game 2, but games 3 and 4, he played it. He was the X factor in the 6-man that helped the Knicks win that series. And that's one of the biggest keys when you have depth on your roster, guys that can score points outside your star players. And in game 3, you also had Josh Hart had 12. Bridges 23. And if you look throughout the series, you see Hart had double digits in games 3 and 4. Only had 8 points in game 1, 5 in game 2, but you had multiple games where Josh Hart scored double-digit points. Shamet had multiple games scoring double-digit points. And that's one of the big factors for the Knicks right here. And it takes the pressure off Jalen Brunson to carry this team, whereas the Sixers in game 3, now, to their credit, they did have Edgecombe, Maxey, Embiid, George, and Oubre all had double-digit points, but they didn't have that dominant scorer the way you did with the Knicks with Brunson. And then you look at the bench guys, barely any points coming from the bench. Dominic Barlow 2, Quentin Grimes 6, Watford 3, whereas Shamet was the big difference maker off the bench for the Knicks in this series. But hey, that's ultimately why the Knicks were able to move on. And that's ultimately why they dominated the Sixers in this one, because they had different guys that could score points. They were able to control the game that way. And when you put the two benches on the court, clearly the Knicks were the far better bench. It was like a professional team playing against a minor league team or a community college basketball team, pretty much the way it played out when you compare the two respective benches to each other. And that's ultimately the difference factor in why the Knicks won this series. So congrats to the New York Knicks. And all I can say is best of luck to you guys in the Eastern Conference Finals against either the Pistons or Cavs. We still got to wait and see how that plays out. But more on that later. Now we're going to talk about the 76ers a little bit. So the 76ers, as you can tell by the title, they've become a complacent second-round playoff elimination. It's been consistent throughout the Embiid era since they first made the playoffs in 2018. Embiid's first time on the team, they got bounced in the second round by the Celtics. 2019 against the Raptors, the quadruple doink from Kawhi Leonard, Game 7, sent the Raptors to the conference finals and then eventually the NBA championship. 2020 got bounced the opening round by Boston. 2021, second round, 7-game is lose to the Hawks. 2022, Miami Heat, second round. 23, Game 7, second round against the Celtics. 24, open round to the Knicks. Didn't make the playoffs or the play-in in 25. And then 2026, second round elimination. And you get the point. The 76ers have grown complacent as a second round elimination. This ties into, there's one reason why they've consistently been eliminated in the second round. And it's actually not Embiid going into the playoffs injured. It's not his lack of playoff durability, even though that has been a factor. But there's one factor that isn't going to get discussed as much that should be. Similar roster construction throughout the Embiid era. We've seen it over and over again. They invest all their eggs in their starting lineup. They try to go put potential good big threes or duos in the starting lineup. And how did it pay off? It paid off with Embiid and Simmons. That didn't work out. Simmons ultimately didn't live up to the hype. Then you tried to bring a big three with Tobias. That didn't work out. Then it was the big three. First it was a duo, Embiid, Harden, then the big three, Embiid, Harden, Maxey. That didn't really work out. And then the big three with Embiid, Maxey, Paul George didn't really work out. And here's why. They don't invest in building up their bench. They don't. We've seen it consistently. Every season they do the same thing, hoping for a different outcome. They focus on the starters, but they don't make sure they got the right players, the right role players on the bench. And let's take a look at how many role players they let slip through their fingers throughout the Embiid era. Here's a little list. Remember Isaiah Joe? Was a guy that showed some flashes in the G League. Not going to be a starter, but a guy that could be a decent bench player, can make you a few threes. He barely was utilized by the Sixers and then ultimately got shipped to OKC, won a ring there, and he's still a solid role player over in OKC. Paul Reed, who was a decent backup center for the Sixers when he got playing time, but ultimately the Sixers didn't utilize him that much until his final year in Philly when Nick Nurse took over as the head coach. When Embiid was injured and they had to use him, he got snagged away in 2024 free agency by the Detroit Pistons. Ultimately, that didn't work out. Remember, you had Jared McCain, who had a solid rookie season when he was playing. Not the greatest rookie season in the world, but showed like he could be a potential promising bench piece even, or at least a role player that could give the Sixers some scoring, either additional scoring or off the bench and be a good six-man. What did the Sixers do? They traded him away to the OKC Thunder. Now McCain gets to go ring chase over there. And his Oak team, he's part of a team that's in the Western Conference Finals. So there's just a few examples of role players the Sixers let it get away. Not to mention they drafted Mikal Bridges, never to utilize him, who was cooking the Sixers throughout the series against the Knicks as a member of the Knicks. Oopsie daisy on that one. But that's just a small indication of a bigger problem, that the Sixers don't have the right depth pieces, or they don't know how to utilize their bench more so. Because we've seen they've had guys, like I just said, Reed, Isaiah Joe, Jared McCain. They don't know how to utilize them. They only focused on utilizing the starters. And out of their starters, they got currently 2 of their main 3 starters are injury prone. So, I mean, it's a miracle they even made it this far in the first place when you consider that Embiid and George were in and out of the lineup throughout the season, not to mention Paul George's suspension, hence the nickname Percocet Paul. But the point is, we've been doing this for years. And look at who are some of our bench players we've had throughout the Embiid era. Fortkin Korkmaz, remember him? PJ Tucker, who was a few years past his peak. We didn't get Houston Rockets PJ Tucker. We got an older version of PJ Tucker that wasn't as efficient. Sure, you get the corner 3 occasionally, but we didn't get the PJ Tucker from the Houston Rockets that Daryl Morey figuratively fell in love with. We didn't get that. Man, we had Tobias Harris in a huge contract. We put too high expectations on him, but now he's on the Pistons where he's better as a role player with less pressure, and he's done better with the Pistons than he had with the Sixers to some extent. And we see this poor roster construction. Remember Dario Saric? We had a guy in Dario Saric who was actually decent, but we didn't keep him for that long. And it's just been the same repeated pattern of not poor roster construction. Like, you look at teams like the OKC Thunder. They got depth on their team. You got SGA as your superstar, but you also got guys like even decent players like Isaiah Hartenstein, Carson Wallace, who actually had himself a pretty good series against the Lakers. We'll talk more about him in a bit. You got Isaiah Joe, who's being utilized in the right role. He can come off the bench, get you a few threes, score a few points to at least keep the momentum going for while the starters are getting some rest. That guy who the Sixers let go of. And Jared McCain, another depth piece for OKC Thunder. That's one of the biggest problems there. You look at the Boston Celtics 2024 roster with that championship run. You had Korkmaz, Derek White. You also, of course, you had Tatum and Brown, but you also had those guys. You had, no, not Korkmaz. You had Al Horford, Porzingis. You had Drew Holiday was a key piece there. Derek White was starting to show some promise that season. You had Luke Cornett, who was actually a solid addition for the Lakers. The point is, that team had depth on their roster. Peyton Pritchard, who now with more experience starting to break out. Sam Hauser. Boston had depth on their roster, something that the 76ers have not done. And it's not just that. Look throughout NBA history at some of the all-time great teams. Look at even some of those Bulls teams. Throughout, like, Last Dance era Bulls, you still had, along with MJ, Scotty, Rodman, you still had other pieces there, too, that were solid. Like, you still had Robert Parrish, who brought, yes, Robert Parrish from the Boston Celtics team. He was there for one last go. You had Steve Kerr, who was a good three-point shooter, an excellent role player. Tony Kukoc, Ron Harper. You look at the way that roster was constructed. They had other pieces on the roster besides just MJ, Scotty, Dennis Rodman. You actually had players that they didn't have to be Michael Jordan or to win. They just needed guys that knew how to play their role right, that could do the simple things like get you the rebounds or get you the assist or get you those 1 or 2 threes to help out, keep momentum going. Or look at the 2011-2012 Miami Heat. You had guys like Mario Chalmers, who was a good role player. Shane Battier was an excellent role player. Juwan Howard, a veteran who brought the experience and leadership factor to the team. Udonis Haslem. James Jones, who was a pretty good three-point shooter. The point is, throughout NBA history, a lot of these championship-winning teams all had something in common. They had depth on their roster, something the Sixers have not done. Maybe I'll give you one more example. Let's take a look at the San Antonio Spurs from like the mid-2000s. You had guys like Duncan, Parker, Ginobili, but you also had guys like Robert Horry, Bruce Bowen, even Brent Barry for a year or two. Michael Finley, I think, may have been on one of those teams one year. You had depth on that roster, too. It wasn't just the starters. Like I said, so that's the biggest thing. That's something that the 76ers have consistently missed out on throughout their tenure. And now, but that's the biggest factor the Sixers have been doing that they haven't gotten right. They keep missing out on getting the right players. And this year was guys like Quentin Grimes, guys like Johnny Broom, who wasn't that great. Andre Drummond, who he's not even the same Andre Drummond he was his first tenure with the Sixers. You had those guys. You had guys like, then you had Justin Edwards, guys who really weren't that much of a difference who couldn't make much of a difference at all for the Sixers. Not even a little bit. I mean, these guys weren't even on, say, Steve Kerr on the Bulls or Brent Barry on the Spurs or James Jones on the Heat level in terms of being role players. They weren't. And that's the biggest problem for the Sixers, why they've been a complacent second-round elimination. But now that brings the next question. Will Joel Embiid finally get axed from the 76ers? Will the Sixers finally move on from him? That's a key question I got to ask because we've been seeing this now for quite a bit. The 76ers have been like, we had the discussion. Embiid had a press conference where he admits he was sitting with his son on his lap. He says there's a lot of questions about where it's going from here. And I even I put a poll question up on my community page, actually. I'll put the link to my community tab for you guys. If you guys haven't voted on, you can vote on asking whether or not Embiid's going to leave. So there's the link right there. You can go. It's my second post down. First post is the link to this episode. Second post is the poll asking, will Embiid leave? You guys can go vote on that poll while it's up. I already got 11 votes, and it's been up 21 hours. So about a day, we got 11 votes. But yeah, Embiid, this is the first time. He's saying, like, look, I don't know about the future. Flat out admitting in a post-game press conference. Now that's why we got to ask the question, will he be out? Now, I think at this point, personally, it's like you've tried with Embiid. He's been there since really 2016. I'm not going to count 2014, 2015 where he didn't play. He's been there since 2016. He's had numerous All-Star appearances, an MVP. They've been a reoccurring second-round elimination, but I don't know, man. I mean, we've seen Maxey and Edgecombe look like they could produce more for the future. I think this might just be the time where the Sixers meet personally to say, hey, try to trade Embiid away, get something in return, build around Maxey. But the question is, who's going to take on Embiid's contract, though? That's the key question. And secondly, that's why, number one, I'm not sure if he's going to get moved. And secondly, we're not even at the conference finals yet, let alone the NBA finals. We've only got 2 legs in the race out of the 4 teams that will potentially be in the respective Eastern and Western Conference finals. So we got to wait and see on that front, man. But I do think there is a possibility Embiid could be out, but we will ultimately find out more as time goes along, whether or not he's staying or he's going. I'm actually just pushing my laptop back real quick because the sun's starting to come in. I want to make sure I keep my laptop in the shade to prevent it from overheating. And as I was saying, though, while it is a realistic possibility the Sixers might part ways with Embiid, it's still too early to tell. So I'll leave it at it's a possibility. But we'll keep an eye out over time on the story, see how it plays out, and then we'll decide from there if that's the case or not. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the Sixers, man. Although, here's one more thing I want to say. I did like what we saw as far as the good this season goes. I like what we got from Edgecombe. Nice effort for a rookie season. Maxey was out there doing his thing. Kelly Oubre showed he could still be a productive player at times, but They need more depth, man. They need those guys that can actually play off the bench. They didn't have it. You're not getting it with guys. But at the same time, I wonder, considering this has been a problem year after year after year, do you guys think it's coaching too that might be part of the reason the Sixers struggle to build up their bench? You guys are more than welcome to debate in the chat. Let me know, because I'm more thinking about it, considering that this is the common factor has been the Sixers can't build up their bench. Maybe they're just not coaching them right. And that might be part of the problem too. Maybe teams like the Pistons and the OKC Thunder and the Knicks are doing better at coaching their bench to be effective role players. That might be part of the reason why the Sixers have the same problem year after year too. So I'll leave it on that thought, take a quick break, then we'll be right back. And we'll talk more about the other two active series, is the OKC Thunder sweeping the Los Angeles Lakers. Then we'll talk about the Pistons and Cavs. We'll have a few plugs. All that coming in just a few minutes, so stay tuned. You'll be right back. right, folks, after a quick couple-minute break, your boy is back to continue this episode 58 of the 3-Point Blitz. And before we dive right back into it, before we dive right back into talking about the NBA playoffs, obviously which we're gonna have some discussion there to talk about real quickly. We got some quick plugs to go through real quickly. Of course, as always, shout out to the Hardcore Sports Network for always letting me use their platform and streaming this every week. But also as well, give shout out to the network as well. A few plugs for them. Also on the Hardcore Sports Network, along with this, later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are going to have everything on the table featuring yours truly and Agent Warrior X for episode 13. Where we'll have some similar discussion where you'll get Agent's take on subjects such as the NBA playoffs, the two respective sweeps, possibly Stephon Diggs, some other hot subjects as well, but also on the Hardcore Sports Network. If there are any New York fans here on Friday, May 22nd, not this Friday, but next Friday, a new show will be debuting on the network called the Borough Breakdown with hosts Jason and Evan, where they'll be talking New York sports, the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Yankees, and the New York Mets, MLB and NBA discussion. So that will be coming up next week on the network. Also as well on the Hardcore Sports Network. You're going to have throughout the rest of this week. Also, in around 6:30 p.m., you're going to have the Baltimore Orioles, New York Yankees Game 2. Live play-by-play will be up there as well. The NXT Watch Along Week 20. Set for 6:55. They'll be airing live at the same time. And also as well at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you're going to have everything on the table, episode 13 with me and Agent Warrior X tonight. And then tomorrow, you're going to have at 6:30 Yankees-Orioles finale, and they're 3 straight back-to-back games. 9:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're at the NFL schedule preview with Cool Cat Connor, avid Eagles content creator. The Broad Street News. It's going to be then the joint show featuring Cool Cat Connor on the 14th on Thursday. And then as the week goes along, you're going to have the weekend wake up with Mitch and Philly halftime, episode 133 in its Saturday morning spot. And then at 1 p.m., you'll have your Saturday episode 37, the halftime coaching adjustment with Philly halftime and Coach Ed Gladney. All that coming up the week on the stay for that. But on that note, though, back to the NBA playoffs itself. We said one sweep in the second round, but 2 sweeps in this one. One day after the New York Knicks got the broom and swept away my Philadelphia 76ers, Arku's OKC Thunder get the broom and sweep away a Luka Doncic-less Los Angeles Lakers. And in this one, it's similar to the Knicks beating the Sixers. The similar factor here was the OKC Thunder had more going as its team in the series. Even the score box last night, you're going to be surprised. There were numerous players that had over double-digit points. You had Holmgren with 16, SGA 35, AJ Mitchell 28. You had Jared McCain had 13. As you see, McCain continues to excel in that role in OKC, and we'll get to move on to the conference finals. What is up, Mitch? What is up? Thanks for stopping by in the chat, man. I just plugged some of the shows for the rest of the week on the network, and I did plug the new show coming not this Friday, but next Friday as well. And thanks for stopping by. As you can see, that's one of the differences last night. Multiple people scoring double-digit points. And I got to say, Carson Wallace, even though he only had 3 points in 19 minutes, Carson Wallace throughout the series was an X factor. You had games 2, he had 12. Game 3, he had 16 respectively. And he was a key factor throughout some of this series to a certain extent. But if you look again, similar to the Knicks, the OKC Thunder had numerous players scoring double-digit points. You had AJ Mitchell had a good outing last night with 28. And then throughout the series, he also all 4 games, AJ Mitchell had double-digit points for the OKC Thunder. All 4 games. Take a quick look right here. You had game 1, 18, game 2, 20, game 3, 24, game 4, 28. So throughout the entire series, AJ Mitchell was absolutely lights out balling in the series. Now, as far as the Lakers go, I will say this. They did give it a go, and they only lost by 5 points. So they did show up in an elimination game, but it wasn't enough. By this point, the Thunder had too much momentum in their favor, and it just didn't work out. And you see, LeBron, to his credit, I will give LeBron credit, though, for this. Even though, the team lost in the second round, throughout the series, I will give LeBron credit. Throughout the playoffs, actually, going back to the Rockets series, he actually was playing pretty solid throughout the playoffs. He averaged about 20. He got 19 points. Game 1, game 2, 28, game 3, 29 against the Rockets. Game 4, he only had 10, but game 5, he had 25, and then game 6, when the Rockets were eliminated, he had 28. Even in the Thunder series, despite getting swept, 27, 23, 19, and 24. So I can't even put this on LeBron James, even though for some it might be the cool thing to laugh at LeBron getting eliminated in what might be his final season, which we'll get to that in a minute. But I got to at least give LeBron credit. He went out there without Luka Doncic throughout the entire playoffs. He helped lead the Lakers to a series win against the Houston Rockets, which some thought the Lakers were in trouble without Luka. LeBron put the team on his back and showed that even at his age, even though he may not be the same LeBron from 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 years ago, he's still, at his age, in his early 40s, is still a very good player. And he still showed, and that also is a testament to his greatness. So I will give him that. But ultimately, the Thunder just had the Lakers' number throughout this whole entire series. Let's go back a little bit. Take a look at some of these other games. We'll see the Thunder's factor here. Again, we talk about the double-digit scorers. How having numerous in the game 3, 131-108 win. Dort had 10. Holmgren 18. Hartenstein 12. AJ Mitchell 24. SGA 23. Carson Wallace 16. Isaiah Joe 12. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys scoring double-digit points. It's another exhibit of why the Thunder dominated. But look at the Lakers. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys getting double-digit points. But a lot of those points were likely in garbage time. Or that may have been early on in the game, though, too. But, I mean, they did try their best, but they were just clearly decimated. Though the Thunder just absolutely on fire. In game 2, but the biggest thing is the biggest thing for the Thunder, though, too, is their youth. Let's see, and for the Lakers in game 2, in their 107-125 loss, LeBron had 23, Hachimura 16, 31 from Reeves, Marcus Smart 14, Luke Kennard had 10 off the bench. OKC, you had Holmgren 22, Hartenstein 10, 20, AJ Mitchell, SGA 22, McCain had 18, Carson Wallace 12. And that right there, again, that just shows right there that the Sixers made a mistake trading away Jared McCain, because he really could have helped the Sixers out. Instead, you just gave him to a team that didn't really need him, but they certainly benefit from his services in the OKC Thunder. And then you look at game 1, you got game 1, you did have LeBron at 27, 18 Hachimura, Ayton hit the 10 mark, Smart 12. And then the Thunder in that 1-0 in there from them. You had 24 from Holmgren, 18 Mitchell, SGA 18, 12 from McCain. So even think about this for a second. When we just go through the score box throughout the entire series, I noticed something. I noticed throughout this entire series for the Thunder, you had Jared McCain numerous 10-plus point games. Isaiah Hartenstein, numerous double-digit games. SGA consistently having double-digit games. Chet Holmgren consistently having double-digit games, even sometimes leading the team in scoring throughout certain game or two in the series. And that's the big factor right there. This Thunder team is red hot going into the conference finals out west, just like the Knicks are out east into the conference finals. But ultimately, at the end of the day, man, OKC Thunder had the Lakers number, and I do. And now, so congrats to the OKC Thunder. Phenomenal job dismantling the. Now they completed 2 sweeps in the playoffs. First of the Phoenix Suns, and then of the Los Angeles Lakers. So that's a huge momentum wise for them going into the conference finals against either the Spurs or T-Wolves. But now, we still got to wait how that plays out. We'll get to that series in a second. But now the key question is with the series, the Los Angeles Lakers, with them losing, with some of the talk and discussion about LeBron James, the question is, will he call it a day? Because it's been rumored that this was going to be his final season. He was going to go out there, try to give it one more go at a ring, playing along with Luka, see how that played out. And Luka Doncic, while he did, when he was in the lineup, play good, unfortunately, he wasn't always available for them. And when it mattered most in the games against the Thunder, a non-factor at all. And yes, while they did overcome the opening round against the Rockets, they couldn't overcome that hurdle in the second round. And yeah, you clearly saw the Thunder were the better team. But you got to wonder, is this the end for LeBron James? And if you look at the top left hand in the corner, I asked him the question, will LeBron James retire this offseason? You guys comment, let me know what you think. If you think this is going to finally be it for LeBron, for me, it's too early to decide because we've already seen with Aaron Rodgers. We remember right after the Steelers lost in that opening round to the Houston Texans a few months ago, I came on here right afterward the next day on the 3-point Blitz and said that I think there was a possibility that Aaron Rodgers would call it the day. But it looks like as of right now, Aaron Rodgers may be coming back for one more season with the Steelers for about $15 million. So there's no guarantee of anything with LeBron. And we haven't heard anything from LeBron yet saying that he's going to retire or not. And we all know, let's be honest, we all know there's going to be talk that's going to drag out. People are going to speculate, will LeBron James retire? Will he come back for one more season? Let's face it, they think, he's going to come back so he can play with Bryce, so he can play with both his sons for a season. Let's be honest. We haven't heard anything from him, so I'm not going to buy into this discussion until I hear it myself. So, and I don't want to give this subject too much attention. So, on the real deal, I'm just going to keep it brief, kind of move on from there, and just leave it at this. It's ultimately LeBron. We'll come back, talk about more when he decides whether he's playing or not. If he does retire, then I'll come on here and talk about it and give an in-depth analysis of LeBron's career. But we still don't know yet. So, at the end of the day, it's LeBron James' decision. We'll come back to it later. So, we still got 2 other series going on, too. It's not just, and it ain't just that. We got 2 series. We also got 2 other series out west. We're waiting to see if our prediction that there's going to be a Spurs and T-Wolves or Spurs and Thunder conference finals will pay out. We know they're tied at 2-2. And we know that we had an interesting controversy in Game 4 where Victor Wembanyama was ejected from Game 4 for an elbow he threw on Naz Reid in Game 4 that got him ejected early, and that ultimately being one of the big factors. Wemby only played 12 minutes. He was ejected for an elbow, and now this creates some discussion on it. Well, I find it a bit. For those of you that don't know, here was the video. It happened in Game 4. There was a video that showed that Naz Reid got hit in the elbow by Victor Wembanyama, and because it was considered excessive contact above the neck. It was considered a flagrant foul too by referee Zach Zarba, and ultimately it sent Wembanyama to the bench and ended up in the outcome of Game 4, leading to a T-Wolves win, tying the series up at 2-2. Now, Wemby will not be suspended for this. He will play Game 5. He was just tossed out for Game 4, which you kind of figured this was going to happen, man. I guess it was the NBA's way of saying, like, all right, we felt that Wemby made excessive contact with that elbow. We decided to pull him from the game. That'll be his punishment. Obviously, they weren't going to suspend their star player for a game, especially with the potential risk of playoffs. But, hey, man, and the thing I noticed now throughout the series, though, so far is the T-Wolves' best shot in the series is when Wemby isn't playing. And I've seen the video, too, of the elbow. It was an elbow, but it wasn't a completely dirty elbow. It was still an elbow nonetheless. So to me, hey, I don't think he should be suspended. It wasn't a flagrant play. Now, if Wemby would have actually blatantly punched, and I don't even think Wemby was fully aware of what he did either, to be real, because when he got ejected, the look on his face was of shock. I don't even think Wemby was fully aware of the fact that he elbowed Naz Reid the way he did. I think it was just kind of pushed his elbow out without I guess to try to instinctively push Naz Reid off, but didn't realize truthfully realized what happened for the shocked look on his face when he got ejected. Because Wemby's been known to be a humble guy and a leader. And some people say, oh, he's got that superstar ego. Let's face it, all athletes to some degree have it. I'm sure Wemby too. But Wemby, for the most part, is more of a humble guy. After Game 1, he said in the post-game press conference, look, I got to accept accountability for my lack of effort on offense in Game 1. I'm the leader of this team. I got to play better on offense. And I appreciate that coming from a guy like Wembanyama, flat out saying, like, yeah, I got to step up and do better. So the point is, I'm willing to give Wemby the benefit of the doubt for that elbow and say, hey, look, it was probably just an in-the-moment thing. Some people think it may have been an overreaction, but I know Draymond Green commented on it, but the less said about that, the better. I don't want to give his comments attention on here. But I didn't know, man. I noticed the big factor for the T-Wolves where they benefit is when Wemby isn't on the court, tying into what I just said about him accepting accountability for his lackluster Game 1 offensive performance. Because in Game 1, Wemby was not that efficient. He was great on defense, but offense, he was not that efficient at all. He only had 11 points in Game 1, and then Game 2, when the Spurs tied it up, he had 19. Game 3, they dominated. He had 39. Game 4, he got ejected only 12 minutes in, only having 4 points up to that point. That being an indicate, you see right there, that's one big factor for the T-Wolves is they benefit most when Wemby's either out of the game or he's not on point offensively. So for the Spurs, it's great news they're getting Wemby back for Game 5. As long as he puts up a strong offensive performance, I believe Spurs will bounce back and win this series. And not to take anything away from the Timberwolves, who are a pretty solid team all around. I mean, let's face it, they've been to the conference finals back-to-back years. I said last week, and right after Game 1, entering Game 2, it wouldn't be an upset if the Timberwolves were to win the series based off their last couple seasons. However, though, that being said, so far the X factor to me is Wemby. Is he on his game or is he on the court? Now, for Game 5, Spurs are getting him back, something they need. Because so far throughout the series, like I said, Game 3, Wemby went out there, 39 points, absolutely dominated on offense. Wham! T-Wolves didn't stand a chance. Come Game 2, when he had 19, made up for his lackluster efforts in Game 1, the Spurs won that game. And remember, the T-Wolves, they're doing this with Anthony Edwards less than 100%. Remember, he came off the bench in Game 1, which was actually a smart move. They decided to slowly ease Anthony Edwards back into the lineup. Let him go out there, which he's needed, but don't put him out there for too long and run the risk of injuring him worse. But that also goes to show confidence in the T-Wolves team because they do at least have a solid roster. You do have T-Wolves have Ayu's on the team who's been pretty solid for them. He was a big factor when Ant-Man got injured against the Nuggets. You've had Julius Randle was playing better than expected sometime throughout this playoffs. Guys like Jaden McDaniels. So they guys also give, and Terrence Shannon Jr., who's been stepping up to some degree, they at least have a solid roster that gives them a chance in the series. But so far, the big X factor is Wembanyama. They stopped him and slowed him down offensively in game 1, and that helped them win. But games 2 and 3, when Wemby played, they had no answer from. Game 4, he got ejected, and that gave them an advantage. Now, we got to wait and see how game 5 now plays out. Game 5 will be played out tonight at 8 p.m., game 6 Friday, and if needed, game 7 on Sunday. We'll see about that right there. So we will have to actually wait and see how that plays out. But so far throughout this series, though, it's been a competitive series. And what's nice? What did we expect? We got two of the best teams out west going out there giving it their all. But to me, I believe personally, that as long as Wemby's on his game and he's playing a part, he'll be the X factor for them in this series, and ultimately that'll lead to, and that'll be the make or break factor for the Spurs, because that's what we've seen consistently. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this one plays out, because now you got game 5 in San Antonio. Wemby's coming back, probably pissed after being ejected in game 4. He's going to want to have a redemption performance in this one, and he's going to come out with that home crowd behind him, probably roaring tonight, and have an excellent performance. And Anthony Edwards, let's see what the injury report. Well, he did play 41 minutes in game 3, 40 minutes in game 4. He had over 30 points both times. So he'll probably play in this one. So we'll probably see him in this one. As of 5, let's see, game 5 injury report. As of now, it's into. I'll share with you guys real quick. Who we got winning it all? OKC looks like the best. Same here. I got OKC at this point. At this point, I got to say, I got OKC and the Knicks making it to the finals this year, because the way the Knicks just went out there and absolutely dominated that series, I got to say, man, I got to say that I could see the Knicks being the favorites to be either the Cavs or the Pistons, depending on who wins that series. And out west, it's the OKC Thunder show right now. So I got the Thunder and Knicks in the finals. And as far as this game, Spurs and T-Wolves game 5 injury report as of here. Let me actually look into the actual. Let's see what game 5 San Antonio Spurs injury status as of now. Let's take a look. So far, we got the Aaron Fox. He's questionable for game 5 with his ankle injury. And we'll see what that. So we don't know about the Aaron Fox, but the rest of the team will likely play. Anthony Edwards, when it comes to game 5, look, they're mostly they're healthy too. So it looks like we're going to be seeing a full string T-Wolves and a full string Spurs going into game 5. We'll see how that plays out on this game tonight. But like I said, Spurs being at home, I got them taking the nod, going up 3-2. I'm thinking he most likely, barring Wemby getting a serious injury or just completely falling off the face of the earth metaphorically, I see them winning the series in either 6 or 7. But speaking of series tied at 2-2, we also have in the Eastern Conference last night, the Cleveland Cavaliers bounced back and absolutely decimated the Detroit Pistons. Even that series up at 2-2 after the Pistons got off to a hot start, were absolutely roaring. But then, Cleveland Cavaliers haven't answered their own. Now they've ended up won 2 straight games. Starting with last night's performance between the two teams, we did see in game 4 for the Detroit Pistons, we saw Tobias Harris had 16. Cade Cunningham only had 19. Karis LeVert was actually the lead scorer for the Pistons with
those
points.
Early fouls.
And then going back to what I just said earlier.
Mitchell with a good look.
Give me 1 second, folks. All right, I just had to pause something real quickly there, but back to this point. Like I said, we talked about Paul Reed and how the Sixers missed out, let him walk. He had 15 last night for them, and he was the 3rd best scorer on the team. And that was a factor. Now we look at the Cavs last night. Donovan Mitchell showed up had 43 last night for a guy who we've criticized, myself included, for not showing up come playoff time. He balled out last night. It helped even the series at 2 games apiece at home. And James Harden himself dropped 24. He's only 5 for 14 from the field, but he did have 11 assists to his credit as well. He was 9 for 9 from the free throw line. That helped out. Evan Mobley had himself a solid game in this one. And really, just Donovan Mitchell just took over in this game. Like he was on a mission to finally deliver. Now, will Donovan Mitchell be able to do this again? Time will tell on that one. We've seen, because throughout this series, though, Donovan Mitchell has stepped up and brought his game. Game 1, he had 23. Game 2, he had 31, a losing effort. But then games 3 and games 4, he had 35 and 43 respectively. Donovan Mitchell, to his credit, has been stepping up recently. And that's been the big factor in the last 2 games for the Cavs. And who knows, maybe Donovan Mitchell finally steps up and really has that impressive playoff performance we've been waiting on him to have since his days with the Jazz. Now, if he can do that, then who knows, maybe the Cavs get the upset and they move on to the conference finals. But that all still remains to be determined, though. But what we saw last night from Donovan Mitchell was incredible. Here's a guy who we've seen consistently have playoff shortcomings. Remember last year against the Pacers in the second round, Cavs were the favorites, especially after destroying the Miami Heat in Game 4 for the opening round sweep. Turn around the next round. The Pistons. Yeah, the Cavs, they come back this year. Donovan Mitchell's been playing pretty good, but can he keep that momentum up? That, to me, is the big X factor for the Cavs. And for the Pistons, it's obviously all depends on, it's going to come down to Cade Cunningham. Because last night he had a bit of an off night, and that played a factor in the Game 2. That played a factor in the now series being tied at 2 games apiece. So can Cade Cunningham and the Detroit Pistons bounce back? There's always that possibility they can, but we'll ultimately have to wait and see on that one. But hey, last night. But hey, it is tied at 2 games apiece. Now, I give credit. This has actually been a pretty good series thus far, and I'm actually looking forward. But hey, the good thing is for the NBA, the Knicks and Thunder taking care of business. The good things about it is, for one, as a Sixers fan, get the season over with. We ultimately knew they weren't winning the championship. So at least we get it over with. We can just move on from it. Go back to the drawing board again. Now, come playoff, you go back to the drawing board. But elsewhere, you do have Pistons Cavs tied at 2-2. This series looks like it's going to be an interesting one. Out west, we have Spurs and T-Wolves has been a good series so far. While we're waiting for the conference finals, we still got 2 good series active. And with Cade Cunningham, like I said, 23 game 1, it was 23 game 1, 25, 27, and 19. Just get that off my mind while I was thinking about it. But for the Pistons, they're an interesting team because on what they're the number 1 seed, but throughout the season, they have looked vulnerable. And we saw their vulnerability in the series. We saw it against the Magic. They bounced back, rallied to win in 7 after being down 3-1. And we've seen in the last 2 games, the Pistons' weakness points started to get exposed by the Cavs. But when it comes, but also at the same, really both teams have their weak points too. Both the Cavs and the Pistons. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. From what I've seen so far, the big X factor is Donovan Mitchell. And with games 3 and games 4 prove that Donovan Mitchell's got to really step up, at least drop 30 minimum to give the Cavs a shot at winning. And you got to hope James Harden doesn't slump back into his old playoff self, because we've seen this with James Harden. He had 24 last night, had a pretty solid outing, also had 11 assists, but we remember, especially as a Sixers fan, the 2023 series against the Celtics. Excellent performance in game 1 and game 5. But then game 7, when it was elimination game, Harden was MIA with only 9 points. But the real main factor is Donovan Mitchell's going to have to go out there, like I said. He's going to have to score at least 30 points to me. You guys give me 1 second. I got to step aside. I'll be right back.
Okay, we got some breaking news from the NFL world today. So, former Indianapolis Colts head coach, former Eagles offensive coordinator Frank Reich has now been hired by the Carolina Panthers.
Somewhere along those lines.
I like those glasses. I like those glasses, dude. They're nice.
Tonight's gonna be a thriller!
Have I told you I worked at the World Series? It was my first year at the stadium. I went to Fanatics Fest, I went to Comic-Con, and I went to the World Series. It was my first year at the stadium, and the Yankees made it all the way to the World Series. Unfortunately, we lost 5 games to the Dodgers.
I said the Giants will be a perfect fit for John Harbaugh because you already established the quarterback situation. You already established the running back position. You already established the right receiver position, and you have the top 5 pick in the draft.
Todd Bowles, at best, is a mediocre coach. He did the same situation with the Jets back in 2015, ultimately maliciously ruining a power-hungry Baker Mayfield and potentially Mike Evans.
But Indianapolis ultimately came back, got the go-ahead touchdown. Then, at the end of the game, when Brady got the ball less than a minute, Peyton had his head down the entire time because he knew Brady had enough time. But the interception happened. It's funny. All of a sudden, Peyton Manning hears the crowd roaring. He finally looks up and starts jumping up and down real.
All right, yeah, I just stepped aside real second. And yes, that right there will be later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the network. And back to the series between the Cavs and Pistons. This could be a toss-up potentially. I do have the Pistons winning this in 7, but we'll have to wait and see because I feel like eventually it's going to happen. The playoff Donovan Mitchell and the playoff James Harden that we've come to know are going to eventually show up. And the Pistons, despite their flaws, are a really good team. And I think that'll be enough. They have enough to win this series against the Cavs. Now, if that prediction comes true, you get Cavs and Knicks in the conference finals. I don't see the Pistons being able to defeat the Knicks at this point. The Knicks are just way too hot right now as a team, momentum-wise. They're playing lights out, their best basketball in recent weeks. And I see that momentum carrying over. So I do see as of now my predictions. I see Western Conference Finals, I'm still sticking with Thunder versus Spurs, but Eastern Conference Finals, I'm leaning to Knicks Pistons. And then eventual Thunder versus Knicks Finals, with the Thunder winning it all, as I mentioned in response to Grega earlier. But with But we'll leave it at that, man. Yeah, but I don't know, though. So now we do have a little bit of football news to talk about before we wrap this bad boy up. We have seen it. The NFL schedule has been released. Most notably on that schedule, I did drop the YouTube short about it yesterday. The Philadelphia Eagles will play the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day 2016. That was part of the Cowboys' Thanksgiving home game tradition. So that'll be interesting. We'll see how that one plays out. But when we know usually Eagles and Cowboys, usually every year they split up. We'll see how that one plays out. But also speaking of the Cowboys, they will kick off the season on Sunday Night Football against the New York Giants. It'll be Cowboys versus Giants on Sunday night to start the season. At first, I'm thinking, all right, they're already starting with it. But to be fair, I put aside my personal feelings. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the Cowboys and Giants always being featured on primetime, but I got to put that aside. It's a business move. The reason why those NFC East matchups get primetime games every year, regardless of whether or not the teams in the division or the division itself is good, is because it's a draw. You got Philadelphia Eagles playing in Philadelphia, big market city. New York Giants, technically East Rutherford, but it's considered in the New York media market, so that's big market team. Washington Commanders play in the Washington, D.C. market. Technically not D.C., but they're in that market, our nation's capital. Dallas Cowboys, Dallas market, big media market. That's why they're going to continue to put those teams on prime time, whether they're actually good or not. So I'm not even going to complain about it, even though I'm personally not the biggest fan. I understand the business standpoint. Big market cities, they draw casual fans to watch the games. And we also did see Kansas City, Denver is going to get the Monday night opener, I believe. That's going to be an interesting one right there, because we'll have to see, will Patrick Mahomes actually be back for week 1? I think the answer is yes. He's back week 1. And now, with their new toy, Kenneth Walker, helping their run game, we'll have to see how this pans out, especially now with the Broncos actually being contenders. That's going to be very interesting. And plus, you got both Bo Nix and Patrick Mahomes coming off injuries. Remember, there's the intrigue factor of A, will they both play? And B, how will they fare their first time back? Will they be a little rusty early on in the game? Will they maybe struggle in the first half and catch fire in the second half? That one remains to be determined. Because, we remember Tom Brady's first game back after he suffered that season-ending injury in 2008 was a Monday night game against Buffalo. Mind you, when the Bills were at best mediocre, Brady did struggle in the first half of that game, his first game in a year. So we'll have to see if that same thing happens. Well, Mahomes and Knicks didn't get injured till late in their respective seasons. But we'll see if they do end up playing week 1, how will it play out? But also we got other interesting games. The Bills will host the Detroit Lions week 2 of Thursday Night Football on September 17th on Prime. Also, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This will be the first game played specifically in Rio de Janeiro. We know they played in Brazil before, but this will be the first game in the Rio de Janeiro. It'll be the Baltimore Ravens and Dallas Cowboys, giving the Cowboys another primetime game, which I understand, like I said, the business side of it, I get it. Big market teams in that NFC East, they're always going to get primetime games. And also, week 1, Melbourne, Australia, you're going to have the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams on September 10th over at 8:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the USA. Those are some of the games that have been announced thus far. We're still going to see more games announced. The schedule is going to get revealed more, and I'll definitely come back at it next week and talk about it more in depth. But out of those games so far that have been released, the ones that checked my attention the most as an Eagles fan, Eagles Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day. Hey, this would only be the third time it's happened, so it's going to be interesting. We'll see how that one plays out. Bills and Lions, we're expecting the Lions to come back healthy, and it is early in the season, so And to be fair, last year, remember when the Lions were healthy early in the season, they were playing really good football. Then as the injuries started to catch up later in the season, they started to slowly decline. But we'll see if a fully healthy Lions can get back to what they were doing best. And I'm still waiting for more games to be released to give you a better idea of which games I'm looking forward to the most. I already know, I know the Eagles' schedule, who they're playing. So I do have some games on the schedule, of course, beside the Dallas Cowboys. We also are going to be getting the AFC. We're going to be getting the Steelers next season, too. As well, that's going to be an interesting game. We'll see if Rodgers plays or if Will Howard's going to be playing by that point. And with that being said, we're going to segue in a few seconds into the closing segment, the 2-minute recap, where we're going to go through some of the lower tier, but still stories worth acknowledging in the sports world. To close this out, I'm waiting until we hit 126 on the dot to start, and let's do this. It looks like Aaron Rodgers is coming back for one more season, folks. I mean, I thought personally he should have retired last year, but, hey, Rodgers has an ego the size of Mount Everest. He believes he's the greatest thing in NFL history. He's always got excuse when something goes wrong, but he'll give it one more try. We'll see how this goes. And also funny, the Jets are potentially interested in Russell Wilson, potentially having a Russell Wilson-Geno Smith duo. We don't know if that's true or not, but we got to wait and see. And also, too, Stephon Diggs, with his case being cleared, he's going to be on the market. We'll see. Will the Washington Commanders or potentially another team potentially bring in a Stephon Diggs? And hey, the Commanders are leaked to be a favorite for him, and I feel like wherever he goes, it's going to be a one-year deal. Probably could be a team like the Commanders. It could be potentially maybe a team like the Raiders just to give Fernando Mendoza somebody. After all, the Raiders are known as the quote-unquote problem child team of the NFL. So he would be a pretty good fit there in that regard, but we'll see. Maybe the Dolphins take him, but we got to wait and see. But Washington looks like the projected favorite to land him as now on a short-term deal. And speaking of the NFL, I got to give credit. It just came to my attention. Tom Brady is a minority owner of the Las Vegas Aces WNBA team. He became minority owner in 2023, a few months after he officially retired for good. And in that time period since, the Aces have won 2 championships. You got to wonder, is Tom Brady going to be on a Magic Johnson trajectory if Johnson won all those championships as a player, all those rings as an owner? Lakers, Dodgers, and Los Angeles Sparks. Is Brady on that same trajectory? Maybe. But time will ultimately tell on whether or not Tom Brady ultimately ends up being another Magic Johnson who continues to find success post playing days as a minority owner. Well, I will say this, though, about Brady. Well, we'll see about the Raiders, how this building around Fernando Mendoza works out in the long term. To Tom Brady's credit, I can say this. Being a minority owner of the Las Vegas Aces women's team, he's already doing a better job as an owner than Michael Jordan. And that's not saying much because Michael Jordan was terrible executive. But, man. I rambled on a little bit longer than 2 minutes, but hey, man, that's all I got for you for now. So, guys, thanks for tuning in to episode 58 of the 3-Point Blitz. Later tonight, we will have everything on the table. Episode 13 with yours truly and Agent Warrior X. Last week, Agent was MIA. We ultimately ended up being a one-man show where I did some reactions to Riot Comedy and some of their skits, and also discussed underrated players, which maybe that's a subject that might come up later tonight as well, but anyhow, so that'll be the second of our doubleheader later tonight. We'll have everything on the table with Agent Warrior X, episode 13. He should be available for this one, barring last minute work obligations, but yeah, man, so definitely check that out later tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be on the network, my channel, Agents channels respectively. So you'll definitely want to catch what we got to say later, man. But yeah, with that bit, I'll share the link to you guys real quickly. That being said, though, man, this was a fun episode, and I did think of an interesting subject to discuss for my channel after the show, man. So I'll leave you guys on that note. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure you tune into Everything on the Table later tonight. There's the link to it from the network. And until then, it's your boy Nicky Steve signing off. Enjoy this warm weather. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll catch y'all later tonight. Peace.